Hello everyone and welcome back to the series of Python Unleashed. My name is Ajay and today's topic is class variables versus object variables. Now we are going to understand the difference between class variables and object variables, and in the last tutorial we have just started with the classes and objects, and we have learned that what is a class and what is an object. So once we have a class, once we define the structure and in a class, and then we can create as many objects as we want, isn't it? So this is what we have learned in the last tutorial, and we have created some some member data which was the object variables. So if you can remember, in the last tutorial we have created a class that was student, and there was this init function which is a constructor which is used to create the member data for every object. So we created this member data, that is name, roll number, class and section. All these variables are considered as object variable. Why they are considered object variables is because every object has its own set of copy. Suppose if I create two objects, that is a and b. So A will have its own set of variables, that is name, roll number, class and section, and B will also have its own set of variables and it will have its own values, isn't it? So but today we're going to understand what is class variables. Now if you see the code, there is something different in this code, and that is, this is total underscore student. This is a new variable and I've assigned a value, that is initial value, that is 0, isn't it? So this is a class variable. So anything that you define after the class declaration, that is class student colon, and then you define some variables out here, those variables will be considered as class variable, and all the variables that comes under the init function are considered as the object variable. But there is a big difference. Okay, since object variables have their own set of copies, for example, if I create two objects, that is object A and object B, so as I said, the A object will have its own set of variables, that is name, roll number, class and section, and it has its own data. Similarly, object B will also have its own set of variables and its own data, right? But once we talk about the class variable doesn't have a copies, it has only one copy, since it is a class variable and not an object variable. So as you can see out here, this is a variable name, that is total student is equal to 0. So this will be only one copy that we will have. No matter how many objects we create, this will be only one copy that will be present in the memory, and all the object variable can access this common class variable. We can access this variable. Okay, that also I will show you how to do that, but all the objects can access this common class variable. So understand, a class variable is a variable that will have only one copy. It will not have multiple copies as what we have in object variables. Since A and B are two objects, so these are the object variables since they have their own set of copy, but this will only have one copy. Okay, now how to use this, how to access this, we will just switch over to Python, and we will type the same code, that is class, and the name of the class is student, and then immediately I declare the class variable, that is student, total students is equal to 0. After that, let me just define the init function, that is the init underscore, and the most important parameter that we should have is the self. And let us let us have some parameters also, another parameters like name, and I will give a default value, that is null string, and roll number. Okay, at this point I will just keep these two variables, and I will assign this as 0. Okay, and then what will I do is use self. As I said, self is a reference to the object, isn't it? So self dot name, I give, that is name. Understand, in the last tutorial also I told you these are the just normal variables. Okay, but this self dot name, this is what is getting created. These are the object variables. So whatever I passed, the second parameter, that is any name that I passed, so that name will get assigned to this object variable name. Okay, and then self dot roll number is equal to roll number. Okay, again I repeat, these two, these are just normal variables, whereas self, anything that is associated with self dot and the variable name is an object variable. Understand it? Okay, and then let us have one member function, and I will name that as display. Okay, just to display the data onto the screen. So I'll use the print, and I've used self dot name. Okay, and print self dot roll number. We can give some messages if you want, that is student name, and then comma, and then over here that is student roll number. Okay, so this is the member function, and then we will come outside the class, and straight away we will declare, we will yeah, we will declare two objects, that is a is equal to, now this is the name of my object, and name of the class is student, opening and closing parenthesis, and I will pass the value that is Ajay comma 1. So this is the name that will get associated with this, and so self dot name will receive this value, and self dot roll number will receive the value 1. Okay, and then I'm creating one more object variable, that is b, and I will pass the value as Vijay comma 2. Okay, so these are the data that I'm creating that will get passed to the object variables. And now we can easily say a dot, and I can use display, isn't it? Display. Okay, now what we will do is, under this init function, we are going to make use of this class variable. Now how to access a class variable? A class variable can be accessed with the name of the class. So simple. So name of the class is student dot, and I will simply say total students plus equal to 1. So I'm incrementing that, you know, the variable with 1. So every time this init function will get called, this total student variable, that is a class variable will get incremented by 1. Okay, so how many times this function is going to get called? How many times this function is going to get called as far as this code is concerned? Since I'm creating two objects, isn't it? I'm creating two objects. This init function will get called twice. So every time you create a object, so this is the first statement where I'm creating an object. So for this init function will get evoked, right? And again for this next object, this init function will get evoked. So we are giving a call twice to this function, and we are not actually giving a call. Python automatically gives a call to this function the moment you create objects, isn't it? And then I'm using display, and in display what will I do? I will display the object, the class variable, sorry. So total students, I will say total students, and I will say comma, name of the class is student dot, and then you can see that is total students. Since this will get called twice, so the initial value was 0, and I'm incrementing that by 1, so the value of total students will become 2. So we are actually counting the number of objects that we are creating indirectly, isn't it? And then I'm using display to display the data. So let us see the output, and you can see the output out here, that is the name of the student is name, that is Ajay, and 1. Okay, I'll display the second also, b dot display, and the parenthesis, and then I will run, and you can see this is the first object that got created, this is the second object that got created, and sorry, this one, and this is the total students, which is a class variable. Okay, so class variable, as I showed in this particular figure, that a class variable is a variable which will have only one copy. So when we are actually incrementing, incrementing total students, since there is only one copy, so every time we are incrementing, so the one copy of total students is getting incremented. Okay, so this is the class variable. Now there is some another things that we need to take care of. For example, okay, now this is something really important to understand, but do not get confused. Okay, absolutely. Okay, let us just start this. Another thing that I want to know is, if you can see, I'm using a and dot, and then it is showing me the member function, that is display, and the object variables, that is name, roll number, and total students also. So if I use this total students and I say something like 12, and I also say b dot total students, now I'm using the object, I'm not using the class, understand it. A and B are objects and not the class, right? So these are the objects that we created out of the class, so I'm not using that object name, the class name I mean to say. And I'm use the same for B also, and I'll give something like maybe 14. Okay, and now let us see what happens. Okay, and I will just remove this thing from here, that is I'm incrementing that by 1. I will remove this, and if I run this code, so we have the same output, that is total number of students, that is 2. Okay, this will get this anytime anyway it works. But what if I use self out here? Okay, self dot total students, and now let us just run this. Okay, let me just create this. Okay, I'm not displaying anything, just a minute, I'm not displaying anything. That is a dot display, and then I will use b dot display. Okay, and so I just got confused why it showed the same value. Okay, now let us just run this, and you can see that it is showing that the student name is Ajay, the roll number is 1, and the total student it is showing as 12. And for the next, that is Vijay 2, it is showing the total students as 14. Now how did this happen? This happened because you are actually using the object A and B, and then we are using the object total students. Now if we do such a scenario, then in that case Python will create a new instant for total students. So total students actually becomes your object variable, understand it. This will create an object variable. Since there is a variable in a class with the name total students, so Python will consider, and you associated that with an object, so Python will consider that as an object variable, and it will create a new instance, and then both of them will have this copy. In fact, if I use the same like self dot total students is equal to 0, this is same. Okay, once even if you don't have this, it is still the same. Python will still create an a new instance, that is a total students, understand it. Okay, the new object variable. If I run this, and you can see still we have the same output, there's absolutely no difference. So once you should be very careful while using the class variable. But if by mistake if you associate the object, then Python will create a new object variable, understand it. So for example, if I use this total students, that is self dot total student. Now why I've used self? Because I just wanted to display these values, right? So I've used this self. But what if I use print, and I say total students, okay, colon, and then I say name of the class is student dot, and again it is showing me the total students. And now let us see the output. And under this init function, let me just increment that, the student dot total students plus equal to 1, right? And now we will run the program, and you can see out here the value of total students. Even when I'm evoking the function a dot display, it is 2. Since this init function gets called twice, the total value, that is the total value of total students, that is a class variable, becomes 2. So it is displaying 2, and this total student, so understand that this total student is an object variable, and this total student is a class variable. So in case by mistake if you use this total student along with that object, then Python will create a new object variable with that particular names, and it is same like defining that self dot total student is equal to 0, understand this. Okay, so this is the confusion that I wanted to clear to you. So whenever you use a class variable that is a total student, always you need to use the we can access that class variable with the name student dot, and then the name of the class variable. Okay, so that is the basic difference between a class variable and object variable. I hope you have understood this tutorial quite well. If not, just rewind it, play back again, and just go through it, and it will be very easy for you to understand. Okay, that's it for today. Bye for now.